Hello and welcome back to Geek and Speak, the Geek and Seek podcast. Today, we've been hinting at this for a few weeks. We are talking about our favorite cards from the new set, Outlaws of Thunder Junction. Although, Wizards can't just keep things simple anymore. It's not just a set, so it's not just Outlaws of Thunder Junction. It's also Outlaws of Thunder Junction Commander. It's also the big score, because there was supposed to be another, Aftermath-style set, and everyone was like, please don't do that again, so they just lumped it into this set. So, basically, we're kind of talking about our favorite cards from three sets in one, but we're not going to, begrudging that. We're going to talk about some really neat cards. There's so many cool cards in this set. So join with me today. I have Jason. Jason, how's it going, man?
Pretty good. This set has some heat in it, dude. I'm excited.
I know. It's so cool. And then we also have Preston today. Preston, how's it going?
Pretty good. I am very excited about this set. I think Wizards have been doing a really good job lately.
Yes, I agree. I was a little hesitant on the, Jace with the cowboy hat and stuff. But, you know what? This set's pretty dope. I'm not going to lie. And then, hello, I am your host, Morgan. And, speaking of guests, this is such a power creepy set. I kind of sometimes regret that we've kind of pigeonholed ourselves to be a channel that almost exclusively talks about Commander. I love Commander, but, there's a lot of cards in this set that are going to get, heavy play in non-Commander formats, and that excites me too. But we are mostly talking about Commander cards today. But, yeah, this set's sweet. I'm so excited. Before we hop into our list, reminder that if you would like to support the show, you can help us out a lot by just hitting like on our video, leaving comments, keeping the conversation going, and then checking out our other videos. Did I say subscribe? Subscribe to our YouTube channel so you see other cool videos. And then you can also support us financially by heading over to patreon.com/geekandseek YouTube. That helps out a lot. And then you can hop in our Discord if you do that. As far as news today, the only thing we want to mention is we are pushing the release schedule of our gameplay series back a week. We actually already did film the season finale, the Revenge Week, where we all bring a previous deck back. We already filmed that, but we're pushing it back farther because a couple days ago from when this video is coming out, we are filming a Outlaws of Thunder Junction episode, which we kind of just decided to do last second. So we're pushing the release schedule back a week. It's still coming, but this episode should be pretty cool, so it should be worth the wait. And yeah, we're just playing slightly upgraded precons for that, so that should be pretty fun. The other thing of news, though, guys, did you see the new loot plush? It's awful.
I looked at it. I thought it was like, oh, that's a cute little thing. Then I saw that you ripped open its back to put the dice inside of it, and I was like, I don't like it anymore.
I'll be honest with you. I have not looked at this. This is the first time I'm looking at this. You're going to get my reaction here. I mean...
What a great reaction.
It's...
Go to the fifth picture.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little unsettling.
I don't... Why do you gotta bend him over like that?
So I don't know if you actually saw the card, but the actual card for Luch, Key to Everything. People are joking that he's going to be like the new Pikachu for Magic. I hope that's not really true. I don't really like this card, if I'm being honest. It just says play good stuff. It doesn't tell you to do anything specific. I don't really like this card. And I don't really like his face either. He has demon teeth, and it makes me very uncomfortable. So he's supposed to be cute, but he's definitely not. He's kind of scary. I don't like it, dude. I really don't like this thing.
A beast noble. That's I don't this card just confuses me.
In the story, I guess this is the treasure they were after. But they didn't know that this was the treasure they were after until they opened the vault. And then this is supposedly in this current story arc in Magic, he's supposed to be the hero or whatever. But it's a little cringe.
We bullied Wizards once. Let's see if we can do it again. I need someone to pull a Chewbacca on this little thing.
To what avail, though? What are we going to gain?
Nothing. I don't know. I mean, the upside is I think that Magic does have an identity crisis. I talked about that in a video from a year or two ago. I made a video being yo, Magic needs to have a better identity because they tried doing that with Planeswalkers, but that backfired when Commander became as popular as it is, because Planeswalkers, for the most part, are not that good in Commander, and you can't use them as your Commander for the most part. So that kind of backfired. So I think Magic does need something like a mascot of some kind, especially because they, I think, really dropped the ball on having a show. Like most other popular card games and stuff have had shows, and Magic has just kind of, they've tried and it hasn't happened. So, yeah, I think that they need to try, but if I'll be surprised if Loot works the way they want him to work. So that's a little unfortunate, I guess. But in more fun news, you guys want to talk about cards that we actually, from the new set, that we actually are excited to play with?
Yay!
Which, in all fairness, is a good amount of them.
Yeah, this set's really sweet.
This set's got some great
my list
stuff.
could have been like 8 cards.
Yeah, I had like 6 or 7 cards, and even then, there's plenty of other cards I'm excited to play with, especially outside of just Commander. Before we get into this list, though, we each had our top 3 cards that we're gonna hit today. But honorable mentions to Obeka, Splitter of Seconds. We all agreed that this is a really sweet Commander. If you want to hear us break it down more, you can check out episode 42 of our podcast. Towards the beginning of that episode, we did react to this Commander, bounce some ideas off of each other. We all really like it. And then the other honorable mention is from last episode 43. We talked a little bit about Final Showdown, borderline new white staple. It's going to go in a lot of decks. It's very flexible. In general, we all really like these new spree cards. So if you want to hear our more in-depth thoughts on those 2 cards, you can check out those episodes. But Preston, why don't you go ahead and walk us through your first card on each of our top 3s today?
All right, first up, my card I want to talk about first is Felix 5 Boots. It is a 2 black, green, blue, 5/4 legendary creature Ooze Rogue. It has Menace and Ward 2. If a creature you control dealing combat damage to a player causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. I just really like these kinds of effects where it really incentivizes you to, well, 1, attack, but 2, double up on something that your deck wants to do. It's damage, so it makes the game go quicker, which is always a good thing in Commander. And I just like the silly slime cowboy. I'm just a big fan.
Chris Ron always does deliver on art, and it's more fun when he gets to do a goofy art.
This card is hilarious. I think that it's just so funny. Does he have 6 legs or 5? I mean, I only see 5.
Well, he's Felix 5 Boots, so yeah, he only has 5 legs.
Yeah, but I mean, so you're telling me that everything else coming out of him is arms?
Yes. or maybe it's a tail. I don't know.
It's so silly. I love it. It's and
people
honestly,
really like oozes, man.
Really, really good Commander. This is gonna be a really fun one. Yeah, so hopefully this will make an appearance when I get to play that in that game. I almost, it seems like that there is a fair amount of cards out there for like a 5-color like attack or dealing damage type of, because I just think that this works well with Ishin. Doubling up attack triggers and then doubling up the the combat damage.
So I will say that there's actually very little overlap, because I like them both for a lot of the same reasons. So Ishin and Felix both incentivize attacking and incentivize combat, which I like in Commander because games tend to go long. So anything that can, help speed things along, I like. But there's very little overlap because, well, one, I think Ishin is in better colors for such a thing. But because keep in mind, black is the only color that these two have in common. But things that trigger when this creature attacks versus when this creature deals combat damage, those cards are they have very little overlap. So even though I like Felix and Ishin for a lot of the same reasons, I think those decks are going to look very, very different, which is actually kind of fun, kind of exciting. Felix is also a rogue, and a lot of rogues have combat triggers. So that's interesting if you want to go Sultai rogues. I don't really know what all green brings to the table in there, but if you want to add green to your rogues deck, that's technically an option.
Dude, all the rogues are just following this giant ooze monster in fear of being absorbed by him.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what? I'm gonna follow you, Captain, so I don't,
I like it.
I think he just needs to use those arms to hold all the different swords. That's what he needs.
Yeah, it does trigger all of the swords of X and Y, which Chris Ron also did all the art for. So I wonder if that was intentional. Jason, I know that this is going to be in the 99 of the deck you're playing on the Outlaws of Thunder Junction episode, but Preston, since this is on your list, are you thinking about building this guy?
It's not like a top priority or anything, but he's going to be one of those commanders I have in the back burner when I haven't built in a while, and I'm excited to pull something out. That's how I'm feeling about him at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a big fan of these decks that incentivize combat. Big fan. And I really like Sultai. I think it's a fun color combination. Jason, walk us through your first card.
So the first card that I picked, it is We Ride at Dawn, and it's for 2 and a white. It's an enchantment. It says legendary creature spells you cast have Convoke. So you can tap your creatures to help pay for the generic costs. And then whenever your commander attacks, create a 1/1 red mercenary creature token with tap. Target creature you control gets +1/+0 until end of turn. Activate only as a sorcery. I like this card a lot because in a creature deck, it's almost like you'll always be able to cast your commander for, you won't have to spend much mana on it because you'll be building so many creatures. And I mean, this thing makes creatures, it allows your commander to make creatures when it attacks, which if you're in a creature-based deck, you're likely attacking with your commander. So anything that's going to help you cheat commander attacks is something that I'm a big fan of. And this one doesn't do it in a super broken way. That's one of the things that I really like about it, is that, it has a strong ability and there's a lot of potential for it, especially in Commander. It's not overpowered.
I like this specifically just on first read. I really like this in Voltron style decks where, it's going to, yes, like you said, because in Voltron decks, if you just keep their commander locked out of the game, well, they're going to have a hard time winning, But if you're giving your commander Convoke, it's easier to get it back. And then you're obviously going to be attacking with your Voltron commander, so you're obviously going to be making these tokens, which not only can they Convoke it back out if it dies, but they also can give it the power boost. So in Voltron specifically, I'm like, dang, that's kind of gas. But as I'm saying here, thinking about it, I kind of think that this is probably good in a lot of decks. It's good in, because it just says your commander. So like if you have like a partner pair, it works there for both of them, which is, and then, it cares about tokens. It's in the, oh crap, what's it called? The Outlaws precon. That's where this card comes from. There's a Convoke precon from last year. There's almost an argument that if you're just a Legends heavy deck, that this can go in there as well. Like if you have a Sisei deck or the new Joda, something like that, maybe it can go in there just because you have a lot of legendaries, which is kind of just true in Magic anyways. Even if you're not playing one of those decks, there's just so many legends that, I don't know, this seems pretty good.
I just feel like this is something that can go into almost any white, like any deck that has white in it. For 3 mana, unless you just don't have a lot of creatures in your deck. If you have a deck that you have like 8 creatures in it, probably don't run this card. Unless it's a Voltron commander deck, like you said.
I think the main thing is you want to make sure your commander attacks. Like if your commander is a commander that wants to attack, then I think this is heavily worth considering. Outside of that, I think it's a lot more up in the air, but what do you think about this card, Preston?
I really like it. I'm interested into maybe putting it into my decks. At first, I was thinking of maybe putting it in my Benny deck, the token making deck, because obviously you could use all those tokens for Convoke. But I looked and I only have like 4 or 5 legendary creatures besides Benny who already has Convoke. So I'm not gonna put this one in that one, but I think it would actually be pretty good in a lot of token decks because like especially the aristocratic ones, the like white and black, because those have a lot of token making, but they also have a lot of legendary creatures in them usually. So decks like that are probably going to want this. And yeah, it's just a good card without feeling oppressive, I feel like.
Yeah, I like it. It kind of makes tokens. It's kind of ramp. It's kind of a power boost, but it's, not the best at any of those things, but it kind of does a little bit of all of them for only 3 mana. So, and it's an enchantment, which means that there's certain decks that are just going to have a hard time getting rid of it too, which is kind of nice.
And there's, you have to have certain removal to deal with it.
Right. Yeah, so like black has very few ways to get rid of it. Red kind of doesn't have a way to get rid of it, so.
And it's not like a lightning bolt for removal. It's not like a this needs to go now.
No. This is a card that's going to fly so far under the radar that you're not even going to realize it's a problem until they're tapping 6 creatures to play their commander for 3 mana. It's like, oh my god.
All right, so we'll go ahead and talk about my first card. This is Insatiable Avarice. For 1 black mana, it's a sorcery that has Spree. So its mana value is only 1, but you can't just cast it for 1. You have to pay one of these additional costs in order for it to do something. So the 2 modes on this one are for 2 additional mana, so for black and 2, search your library for a card, then shuffle, put that card on top, or you can pay black, black, black to target player draws 3 and loses 3. That second mode specifically is what excites me. You would have to be a black heavy deck, but for 3 mana draw 3, that's like the premium. Like there's a lot of other 3 mana draw 3s that were like, oh hell yeah, I'll play that. And if you can get around the restrictive black, black, black cost, that's really good. And then the tutor mode on here is not very good, right? It's a bad vampiric tutor, kind of. But it's, having the flexibility is nice. This is low enough on the power scale that it's not going to really show up in CEDH decks, I don't think. Maybe mono black CEDH decks. But it's flexible enough with the card draw mode that I think having that flexibility is nice. Like, because keep in mind with Spree, you can't pay both of the costs. So for 5 mana, do the bad vampiric tutor, draw 3, lose 3, but one of those cards is the card you just tutored for. So that flexibility is really nice. There's also the secret third mode, which is you kill someone who has 3 or less life, because it's target player. It doesn't have to be you. So the secret hidden third mode is you can kill someone if their life total is low enough. So I really like this card. I really like playing black. I like playing 3 mana draw 3s. The little bit of extra upside that sometimes it's a tutor. I really like this card.
Yeah, I'm usually not a huge fan of tutors, but of all of the ones that exist out there, this is probably one of my favorite, one of the ones I like more because of that second option. So I like it. It's not like a staple to me necessarily, but I might pick up a copy and put it in a deck or two.
Yeah, I'm definitely more interested in the second mode. The 3 mana draw 3, hard to beat.
So currently this card is going for between $5 and $8. I think that's going to drop because I think that, at 3 mana for a tutor at sorcery speed, yeah, exactly. I mean, that's to me, that's better than Diabolic Tutor because sometimes you need that extra 1 mana. I know that there's not a whole lot of difference between 3 and 4, and it's like, would you pay 1 mana to rather have it in your hand? It's like, I guess. But I think that you should never play Diabolic Tutor again, in my opinion. I think that now that this card exists, it's this card and then all the other tutors. Like, this is like the base tutor. But it's also doubling as one of the best draw spells in Magic. I mean, I feel like that's a stretch to say, but at the same time, that's just immediately what my brain thinks when I read. Like, it's 3 black, draw 3, lose 3. In Commander, especially, this is one of the best draw spells in the game. It sucks that it's a sorcery, but that's fair, honestly.
Well, do you guys like Painful Truths? I play Painful Truths in every deck that can. It's 3 mana, draw 3, lose 3, but it only works if you like it's you have to spend 3 different colors of mana to cast it, right? I play it in all of my 3, 4, and 5 color decks that have black in it.
Here's the thing.
This is kind of better if you can get around the restrictive mana cost.
This is a lot better because it's less restrictive. Because now, you could spend 3 mana and draw 2 cards.
Yeah. Painful Truth is better in a 4 or 5 color deck. This is better in a 1 to 2. In a 3 color deck, I think they're about even.
You could put this into any deck that has black in it. I feel very confident in that. I just think that I don't think that you find yourself often in games where, unless you're like expecting to cast this on turn 3 or 4 every game, which I think is a bit unrealistic. I think that by the time that you're going to be able to cast this on average, which is probably turn 5 to 7, I would say on average, you're going to have access to 3 black mana. And whether that's from sources that only produce black or sources that can produce any color. If you're in a 2-color deck, it's really good because you're going to have, one of each color. You only have 2 colors to deal with. If you have a 3-color deck, it's still going to be good because you probably have a decent amount of lands or at least mana rocks that add 1 mana of any color. And in 4-color decks and 5-color decks, the same reasoning. You want to be able to have a wide variety of cards that can produce any color. That way you can hit whatever color you need at any given moment. So I feel like that even though that it's 3 black, it's a lot less restrictive than Painful Truths. And because of that, it can go into any deck that has black in it, even if it isn't a black-specific deck. It's a really, really powerful draw spell, especially for 3 mana.
And even if you don't hit the black, you can just do the 2 part. Because it still costs 3.
That's another good point why I think it could go into any deck, even if it doesn't, even if it's not heavy a black deck.
Yeah, and outside of budgetary reasons, if your deck has black in it, you're running Urborg. So you draw your Urborg, or you can tutor out your Urborg. You get there even if you don't have the pips. But yeah, I think casting this on turn 3 for the card draw mode is unrealistic for a lot of decks outside of maybe mono black. But you'll get there eventually if your fixing is good. Something I just thought about though with the tutor mode, because I seriously think that the tutor mode is just like the cherry on top. Like I'm almost always just doing this for the card draw. Something that makes the tutor mode more better though, at least a little bit, is so many decks just have incidental card draw sitting around. Whether that be your Ristic Studies, your Trouble in Pairs, or your creatures that say when it attacks, draw a card, or whatever. You just incidentally on your battlefield, without having to spend more mana or more resources, you will just have every now and then have ways to draw cards. So you're, essentially going to draw that card you tutored up for a lot of the times anyways.
But then, I feel like we're talking a bit too much about them being separate. For 5 mana to tutor a card and then draw it plus 2 other cards and lose 3 life, that's pretty efficient. That's pretty good. 5 mana, tutor a card, draw 3, lose 3.
Yeah, people would play that if that was just what the card said.
That's true.
I feel like people would play that. I feel like it wouldn't be $8 unless it was an instant if it did that. But God, this is a really good card.
I'm excited to play it. I
all
know
of
for
the
sure.
spree cards are so cool.
Yeah, I love all of the spree cards.
It's a really cool mechanic. I wasn't sure how I was gonna like it, but it's really cool.
Yeah, we joke that everything is kicker. Gavin Verhey has his own YouTube channel called Good Morning Magic, where he talks about a lot of behind the scenes stuff at Wizards of the Coast, and he made a video recently talking about yes, we know everything is kicker, and here's why that is. And it was a video explaining the spree mechanic, and it's a great video. And honestly, I think spree is the best version of any of these. I really like it. But if you want more more to digest on our thoughts on tutors, we actually did an episode of the podcast about tutors. That was episode 42, so just like 3-4 weeks ago, something like that. So check that out if you would like. But Preston, go ahead and talk to us about your number 2 card.
All right. Next up, I have Heartless Conscription. It's a sorcery for 6 and 2 black. Exile all creatures. For each card exiled this way, you may play that card for as long as it remains exiled, and mana of any type can be spent to cast that spell. Exile Heartless Conscription. I love these big, dumb black board wipes where it's like you spend a ton of mana, but you get some huge benefit out of it for making it an expensive board wipe. And this might be my favorite of all of them. Like, because you get to exile the creatures, which is always a huge deal with a board wipe. That's always super nice. But you can get your stuff back and your opponent's stuff, especially if they have like creature lands or something. Ugh, I love this card. It's kind of dumb, but I love this card.
No, I disagree on you saying it's dumb. I think this card is incredible. I genuinely think about the follow-up. Think about the follow-up. Everyone has to rebuild, but now you get to rebuild with their stuff. So their combo pieces that you just exiled, you can now play them, and you can win the game with their combo pieces. This card's incredible. I love it. I think it's one of the best board wipes. It's not the most mana efficient, but the payoff, I'm telling you, because you play this for 8 mana. Like, you're going to have 8 mana when it comes back to your turn to play the cards you exiled. Depending on what you exiled, you might be able to play 3 or 4 things.
Would this card be too strong if it didn't exile itself? Because that's what holds me back. You think people would just loop it? We don't. But we already don't do that with our board wipes, really, do we? Like we have ways to get our board wipes back, but like no one's intentionally looping them.
This is beyond that. This is beyond a board wipe. This is because if you could loop it, now it's a value engine.
Yeah, but then isn't like similar board wipes, because we've now done 2 episodes about board wipes on the podcast. One was last week and one was a few weeks ago. And 2 cards that this reminds me of that we've discussed a decent amount: Decree of Pain and oh crap, what's the other one? Blood Money. Yes. So it kind of reminds me of these. The similarity is that it's giving you something to work with after the lot of mana that you pumped into it. Decree of Pain is only destroy, but you get to draw those cards. And it also has the cycling mode, which is relevant a lot of the times. Decree of Pain is obviously not exiling things, so there are situations where you're like, well, that Eldrazi's still here, crap. But a lot of the times, Destroy is going to cover it, and now you're drawing cards from your own deck. I feel like most of the time, that is better than you gain to play cards from your opponent's deck. Like, Theft decks are sweet. I love Theft decks. This is from the Gonti Precon. I love these kind of decks, but they're objectively not as strong as just playing cards from your own deck, because Commander decks are so synergy-focused. It's so much about just, like, my deck works well because this card and this card go so well together. Whereas if you're just pulling that from other players, there are just like generically good staples, right? Like you might hit someone's, I don't know, Rhystic Study, or you might hit someone's Dockside. There are just like generically good cards that you're likely to hit. That's obviously true. But as far as the synergy pieces, it doesn't hit there. And then with Blood Money, which was the other similar card, it at least gives you the... it's not replacing or helping you build back with card advantage like Heartless Conscription or Decree of Pain, but it gives you the mana to bounce back way faster than anyone else. So I do really like Heartless Conscription. I'm definitely going to try to find at least 1 or 2 homes for it, just because it reads really fun. I'm hesitant to say it's better than Decree of Pain, though.
I think I would really have to think about it and play with this card and just experience a game with it but I definitely think that it's as good as Decree of Pain. The exile is what makes up for the card draw. And here's the thing, you don't necessarily have to play one thing from each player that you exiled. Like I said, you could just play 3 things from one person's board that they were about to win the game with. Or this not being an instant kind of prevents you from waiting until the last moment. You kind of have to anticipate, like, this is, if I don't cast it this turn, they're going to win when it gets to their turn. But I just think that exiling all the creatures and then giving you the advantage of having the option of playing those creatures, it's pretty nice. Just from your own perspective as the caster. But then think about it from the opponent's perspectives. Now they can't even get the stuff that they wanted back unless you cast it and then it gets destroyed and then it goes to the graveyard. But, that's a lot of extra steps. So, like, imagine you cast this against, like, a graveyard deck. They're pretty hosed depending on what things you hit. So I think that this card is a lot more potential.
I just want to be able to. I want to be able to cast this card while I have infinite mana. That way I can just immediately cast everyone's things the same turn.
Yeah, but I doubt that if you have infinite mana, this is how you're going to win the game.
No, but it would be a fun way to do it.
It would be so fun. Oh my gosh, it would be so much fun.
It would be really fun. I'm excited to play with it. These episodes are always hard because it's hard to evaluate card power level when we haven't played with the cards yet. Yeah. I think in most decks, this is not as good as Decree of Pain. But if you're in a meta where there's a lot of legendary creatures, or if you're just playing a Theft deck like the Gonti Precon that it comes in, I'm excited to see it. I'm excited to play with it and against it, see how good it really is, because it reads awesome. So, Jason, go ahead and talk to us about your number 2 card.
So my number 2 card, debated going back and forth with this and my number 1 card, but at the end of the day, I chose this as my number 2 because it's not as personal, I guess. This one is definitely broader, better, good card. It's Another Round. So it's 1 white, 2, and XX for a sorcery that says exile any number of creatures you control, then return them to the battlefield under their owner's control, then repeat this process X more times. So there's a couple of decks that this is an auto included in. The first one I immediately think of is Rune, obviously. But any deck where you are focusing around like ETB triggers, this card is nuts. I mean, this is easily a card that goes into any deck that just has white that cares about enters the battlefield. You don't have to pay into X at all. You can just use this as a exile of any number of things that I want one time, and then don't repeat it. And then 4 mana is exile any number of target things and return them to the battlefield, and then do that again. That'll 5 mana. Sorry. For 5 mana, do that. 5 mana, that could potentially win you the game. Just think about all the different ETB stuff. I mean, if you're in an Orzhov deck, first of all, you got cards like Grey Merchant of Asphodel. That's, depending on your devotion to black and how you've constructed your deck, that's going to give you some insane value for 5 mana.
Especially if you're specifically a devotion deck, then you're running Nykthos, then you're going to be able to pay for that X several times so easy.
Then you got cards like Runescarred Demon. 5 mana tutor for 2 cards, put them into your hand. That's better than what Runescarred Demon does by itself. That's pretty crazy. Cards that will enter the battlefield and then kind of just sit there. You get to do their thing a second time or a third time or a fourth time or a fifth time, and the value you get off that is just gonna be nuts. I mean, think about like if you played like a Venser, Shaper's Font. Now you can just. I mean, well, actually, that wouldn't really work as well. I'm gonna cut that out because that didn't work as well as I wanted it to in my head. Um, you could use this with cards like Dockside Extortionist. That would be nuts. This card has so much potential, and it's a really, really, really powerful card.
Yeah, this card's insane. I just put it in my rune deck, and I'm really excited to play it. Because specifically in like some kind of flicker deck, there's a chance that this just wins you the game.
And you don't need a whole lot of mana to win the game. Like if you, like I said, if you repeat it one time, that could do it.
Yeah. There's a lot of cards that do somewhat similar things as this. The downside of another round is that sorcery speed, because a lot of these like flicker effects you can use protectively because they're at instant speed. So like Eerie Ultimatum, for example, or even Rune, if you just use Rune's ability, you exile the creature and then it comes back, I think at the next end step or something, and that is protection. It saves you from target removal. It saves it from board wipes, what have you. So that's the one downside of another round, is that sorcery speed. But if you're paying where X is 2 or 3, you're probably going to draw a ton of cards. You're probably ramping a lot. You're probably blowing up a lot of artifacts and enchantments. Like, I'm just thinking about like cards that people run in their rune decks. But even then, like, I think I might also put in my God Eternal Oketra deck, because the idea is I play a bunch of dirtily creatures that get value right away, but then I win the game off of, when I play those, Oketra makes me the zombie tokens, and I beat face with the zombie tokens. So in a deck like that, even, it might be worth playing another round because I can get extra value off of my tiny dirtily creatures. So, and we've talked about before how like counter spells and stuff are so important in Commander, because the kill spell is often too late. A lot of the cards that people are playing in Commander, they get immediate value because these enter the battlefield effects are so prolific, and there's you can't stop them. So the kill spell comes too late. So I think a lot of just generic decks might play this. It's pretty good.
Yeah, no, this is just a really good card that is probably going to be really annoying in games of Magic in the future. I can just see it now. Someone plays this for like 7 mana. Oh. And then they clone and then they copy it on the stack. Oh. Yeah, no, this is a fantastic potential win con in those kind of decks, because I feel like a lot of those decks kind of have the problem where, because they're only flicking 1 or 2 creatures at a time, they have a hard time actually winning at some point. This doing all of your creatures at once multiple times is usually a pretty good way to win with those kind of decks. So yeah, this is gonna be pretty good.
That will be interesting to see how that works out, because my rune deck is like that, where even if I have those like Eerie Ultimatums and cards like that and I'm flickering everything, a lot of it's like these 3 mana creatures that's like enters the battlefield, draw a card, or enters the battlefield, go find a basic, or stuff like that. And it's like, okay, now I just have a bunch of 1/1 blockers, even though I have a full grip of cards. Like it's so hard for those decks to actually win the game, and they just take up so much time. So it'll be interesting to see if another round can push that into, okay, this is actually a win con, or if it's just more of a dirtily value piece.
I think another deck where this card will really shine, Enchantress decks that have a lot of enchantment creatures. Really good in those kinds of decks.
And exit the battlefield decks.
Yep. A lot of Enchantress effects are on cast, but a lot of them are just on enter the battlefield. So if you're flickering, then you're drawing a bunch of cards off of the...
Well, I was thinking like, I'm not necessarily saying you build a deck specifically around this, but you know how there's like Constellation, how a lot of the Theros enchantment creatures, they have whenever another enchantment enters the battlefield, kind of taking advantage of stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So my number 2 card is Kellan the Kid. This is the third set in a row I think we've had a Kellan, and they're all different color combinations, which is interesting. Kellan the Kid is for Bant, so for green, white, blue, 3/3 human fairy rogue with flying and lifelink. Whenever you cast a spell from anywhere other than your hand, you may cast a permanent spell with equal or less mana value from your hand without paying its mana cost. If you don't, you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. This is just so much value. So initially when I was thinking about this, the main reason that I like this card is a while ago on our show, on our gameplay show, Preston played a Vega the Watcher deck. And it was a deck that was white-blue that cared about playing things from anywhere other than your hand. And whenever I think it's one of those uncommon commanders where it's just one sentence, that's it. I think it's whenever you cast a spell from anywhere other than your hand, draw a card, right? Is that what it is?
Yes. Yeah.
And that deck is sweet. That card is sweet because you're playing flashback cards, playing things from your graveyard. You're foretelling things, adventures, things that play from exile. It's just really sweet. And it makes you play these cards that, like, a lot of them are just generically good cards that you don't feel bad about playing. But then it makes you to play some other cards that are a little outside of the norm. It's really fun. Killing the Kid is that times 12 because you get access to green, which gives you a lot of new options. And then it kind of plays like Rashmi, from Kaladesh, where you're getting to play something for free after you play a thing. It kind of has that like Uro problem where now you're just getting a bunch of free lands for no reason.
It kind of makes me think of Kodama.
Yeah, kind of like that. There are a few cards that do similar things. So the interesting part is when you play things from anywhere other than your hand, that's what triggers this. That's what's interesting about it. But I think of the commanders that do this, this is probably the strongest one like this, isn't it? Like, this is insane.
Yeah, but a lot of the strong cards that deal with exiling cards, like, either from the top of your library or from wherever, letting you play them, they're not necessarily in these colors.
You sure?
Well, I'd say the best ones are in red, probably. The best, like, exile, like that type of impulse draw.
Oh, well, sure. But
I think like the best versions of those cards are printed in red. So I don't know how well this card is going to be able to take advantage of the really good cards that let you play stuff from, places beside your hand.
It's more open than you think. So I agree that, like, if you're specifically talking about impulse draw, that is more of a red thing, which the first Kellan's red. This also works with like flashback, which there's a lot of good cards in blue. This works with things that have like rebound or rebound, retrace, whatever one of those is, where you get it back on your next upkeep. It works with that. It works with adventures, which is also fitting because
time counters.
Yeah. So suspend. So there are a lot of things that are not red that do work in these colors.
Oh, I do also see like it's good in this set especially because it really works well with plot.
Right. It also works with plot. So I think what's interesting is like I said, the Vega the Watcher deck that Preston had or has, I don't know if he still has it. What was so cool about that? Well, I think it was perfectly functional at just white blue, but green coming to the table, and now you have that land ramp aspect. I feel like it's insane. I feel like this is a completely bonkers commander.
I like it. A couple weeks ago, I built a Shauna. I built that deck just because I was going through some of the legendary creatures that I have, and I was like, oh, this is 3 mana Bant commander. I don't have a Bant deck I don't think that I've built, so I'll go ahead and build this. If I had seen Kellan the Kid beforehand, I probably would have built this instead. I love my Shauna deck. It's actually really good. At least I think it's good. But this, I would build this. This is pretty sweet. The more I think about it, I see what you're saying. It's a lot. It's pretty open-ended. Like it. I like it a lot.
Does the Doctor Who precon you played last episode on Upkeep, does that trigger this? Because doesn't it let you play things from the top of your library? So that would trigger Kellan.
That would trigger it 100%. And it's the colors.
This card's awesome.
This card's pretty sweet.
I do still have my Vega deck. If Morgan ends up building Kellan the Kid, I don't play that deck super often. I might just let him have whatever cards he wants from it.
Bad. I don't know if I'm going to. I really like the play pattern. I like that it's a little abstract. But there's a chance I could build it. I do have like I said, I have a rune deck. So I already have a Bant deck. I think it's different enough that like it would probably be fine if I also had this. But dude, I have too many decks. I do not have time to play all the decks I have. So I don't know for sure. I don't think I'm gonna end up building this, but it's so freaking strong and it's so cool. And I like the cards that forces you to play with. So it was worth mentioning. Preston, why don't you go ahead and talk to us about your favorite card from the set?
All right. Of all the cards in the set, my favorite is Smuggler Surprise. It's a green instant. It's one of the spree cards, so it costs 1 green for sure, but then you get to choose any of these. Add 2 generic. You mill 4 cards. You may put up to 2 creature and or land cards from among the milled cards into your hand. You can add 4 generic into green, put up to 2 creature cards from your hand onto the battlefield, and you can add another generic. Creatures you control with power 4 or greater gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. This card is bonkers. Of all of the spree, this might be the strongest one. It's filling your graveyard. It's giving you lands. It's giving you creatures. It's letting you free play creatures. It's a protection spell. It's every single thing a green deck wants to do in one card.
To me, the middle mode is what's spicy. The fact that it's 6 mana. Let's say you're only doing the second mode, right? It's 6 mana, get 2 of the best creatures from your hand onto the battlefield. Which, by the way, if you pay the first mode and the second mode, there's a chance that you're better able to set up that second mode, right? Because you get to mill 4 and then put a creature card and or land from among them in your hand, and then the second ability resolves, right? But there's got to be like combos that this works with. Like this reads like Tooth and Nail, and Tooth and Nail is a combo piece in like every format. It kind of reads like a slightly worse Tooth and Nail, but even then, it's kind of better than Tooth and Nail because it's so flexible.
You just play Simic and you just go get Leveler and Thassa's Oracle.
That would do it.
Preston, you know what Leveler does?
Oh yeah, that something about exiling cards from your library.
Yeah, when it ETBs you exile your library.
Yeah.
So you just grab that and Thassa's Oracle, you put them onto the battlefield and boom. Game, set, match.
So the one awkward part about this card, and maybe I'm off base, so you guys let me know. I think the first mode, while I kind of like it, it's a decent card selection. I don't know how many graveyard decks are actually going to want this. Because a lot of graveyard decks, well, yeah, you mill 4 for 3 mana, and then you get to put a couple things in your hands, which is kind of nice. A lot of these graveyard decks, you actually want to have, consistent ways that you're going to be able to play basically anything that goes to your graveyard. And without jumping through extravagant hoops, you're not realistically going to play this from your graveyard if you accidentally mill it. And then it's just a waste of a card. So I think that that's maybe a downside, but maybe you just don't play this in graveyard decks then. I don't know.
No, you play it in graveyard decks.
Here's the thing. In a graveyard deck, if a card said 3 mana mill 4 cards, is that good?
If I get to put up to 2, like a couple cards back into my hand that I can now set up, yeah, it's good. Like in my Muldrotha deck specifically, I have a card called Mulch, which I think is 2 mana, mill 3, and then you can put a land from them into your hand. This is kind of better than that. Well, I mean, if we're just talking about the first mode, it's kind of better than that. But then if you lump it all together, that's the thing. These free cards are insane because they're so flexible. They're so strong. But yeah, I mean, it's playable in a graveyard deck. But I mean, like without jumping through hoops, a lot of graveyard decks don't actually run a lot of instants and sorceries, is my point.
This card, the first one is an early way to get some ramp or pick out a couple good creatures for later. The last ability is your protection spell, and the middle ability is your potential win con. It's early ramp, protection, and potential win card on one card. This is probably the best card of the set. It's insane.
I don't know if I'd agree with that.
It's
at
up
all,
there.
but it's definitely one of them.
It's up there. I think it's going to be playable. This is actually one of the cards that I think has some potential to get play outside of just Commander. Like, it's of a power level that I'm like, maybe it's good enough to see play elsewhere. It's pretty cool. The thing to note about the middle mode is that while it does enable some combo wins and even just good value, you're not going to get like cast triggers. So like it doesn't work with like Eldrazi or something. But you do still get your enter the battlefield effects, which is...
But you cheat in 2 like 20 mana worth of Eldrazi for 6. So I mean, I'd give up the cast triggers for that, I'm pretty sure.
I think it depends, but I think a lot of the times
I also think it depends, but
I think there are times where I would agree. The fact that it's 6 mana, you could get so much more mana value worth of things in is really impressive. But
I'm personally putting it in my decks as a second copy of Heroic Intervention, basically. And if I get to do one of the other modes, that's fine too. That's how I'm gonna play it personally in my decks.
Yeah, well, that's how I felt about what was it called? Final Showdown. I like it as a protection spell more than anything else. But the fact that it has the other options is what makes it exciting. Like, Spree is awesome. I love Spree. It's so cool. Jason, go ahead and talk to us about your last card.
So my favorite card from this set is gonna be Transmutation Font. So Transmutation Font, it's a 5 mana artifact that says tap. Create your choice of a blood token, a clue token, or a food token. And then it says pay 3, tap, sacrifice 3 artifact tokens with different names. Search your library for an artifact card, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle. Activate only as a sorcery. I love this card because this card enables the bobblehead deck that Preston and I want to build. And I'll tell you how in case you don't know. So this card goes infinite with Academy Manufactor and Clock of Omens. So Academy Manufactor is whenever you make a food token, a clue token, or a treasure token, you make all 3 instead. And then Clock of Omens says tap 2 untapped artifacts you control, untap target artifact. So what you do is you tap Transmutation Font to make a clue or a food token. Academy Manufacturers are going to make all 3. They will all enter untapped. You tap 2 of them with the Clock of Omens to untap Transmutation Font and rinse and repeat. You can make infinite treasure tokens, you can make infinite food tokens, infinite clue tokens, and they'll all be untapped. Well, you have to make a lot of treasure tokens first, and then
you have to make the clue of foods first.
Yeah, you basically you have to make a clue of food tokens a bunch of times so that you have the tokens to keep untapping it to make blood tokens. Because if you do that for a while and then just make blood tokens, you will run out of untapped tokens. Just because, Academy Manufacturer doesn't trigger on the blood tokens. But then, if you think about it even more, it becomes infinite artifact searches. Because now you have infinite mana, you have infinite untaps.
Because you have the infinite treasures.
And you have an infinite amount of artifact tokens with different names. So now you can just tutor up every artifact that you want onto the battlefield. And then, because you're also making the infinite mana, you can now do the luck bobblehead as many times as you want to win the game. And just make your opponent sit there for 17 hours while you just try to roll 7 6s in a row.
Legend says he's still trying.
This card is so much fun. I think it's so cool. For 5 mana, I don't think it's necessarily the strongest card. Um, I mean, the tutor aspect of it is okay, but 8 mana, sacrifice 3 tokens, tutor up an artifact onto the battlefield. It's like, that feels like a lot. Like, I would rather just pay 11 and cast Blightsteel, you know? Um, but because of, like, what this card is capable of, for me specifically, what I want to do with it, it's definitely my favorite card in the set. It's so interesting.
One slight further update or upgrade with that mentality is that because you're also creating the infinite clues, is that if you don't have your luck bobblehead yet, you'll find it. Because you'll just be able to, with the infinite mana, sack all your infinite clues to go find until you draw your luck bobblehead. At that point, you could just Thassa's Oracle, but it's more fun to sit there for 9 hours rolling for luck bobblehead.
Yeah, you can use that combo to win this game 10,000 different ways. Bobbleheads are just the fun version.
Yeah.
See, the reason that I'm saying it enables bobbleheads, it's not because of that. It's not because it goes infinite with the tokens. It's because it goes infinite with the searches. Because now you can tutor up all 7 bobbleheads onto the battlefield, and then just go to town, baby. Or even if you just wanted to tutor up every bobblehead onto the battlefield and then stop the loop, there's nothing that says you have to keep going. You could just do that until you stop the loop, and then sacrifice all of your treasure tokens and just, play it fair, I guess, from that point on, or whatever. However you want to do it. It's Commander. There's no specific way you have to do things. But, God, I'm so excited to get this card and build that bobblehead deck now. It's going to be so fun.
This would also be really good in the Gimbal deck because it's a making...
I guess I should have mentioned that it is 100% going to go in Gimbal whenever I get my hands on this card. That will happen. But yeah, good point. Good point. I did not mention that.
Yeah, you can definitely do a lot. The fact that it's 5 mana does limit it, I think, somewhat in its combo potential. So I don't think this is something we're going to see in like CEDH or anything. But, I mean, there are just so many, like, neat things that you can try doing with it. And it's not terrible for value either. So, it's cool. All right, so for the last card of the day, cards, I should say, this is my last card. I have 2 cards that are creatures that are white catch-up ramp. And I felt like it was just worth briefly talking about both. So my real one is Claim Jumper. That's my real number 1. But I'm going to briefly talk about Sand Scout. I think this one's more narrow, so I don't think could be my real number 1. But Sand Scout is for 1 and a white. It's a human scout 2/2. When it enters the battlefield, if an opponent controls more lands than you, search your library for a desert card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. And then whenever 1 or more land cards are put into your graveyard from anywhere, create a 1/1 Sand Warrior creature token. This ability triggers only once each turn. So this one's more narrow than Claim Jumper, so I don't think it's really my number 1 spot, even though it's pretty good. The reason, though, that I think it's less narrow than it reads is because there's actually quite a few deserts that are playable, especially if you're playing. So, like, obviously, if you're playing like Hizazon or something, right? But if you're just even playing just a normal deck, you could play Scavenger Grounds, which is a desert. It's your graveyard hate. There's the new Bounce Land one, which is arid something that just came out in the new set. There's a new Bounce Land that's a desert that's fetchable. So there are a handful of deserts that or if you're a 1 or 2 color deck, maybe you're playing like the cycling deserts as well. Just to prevent flood later in the game. So this could tutor them out. Then it's just ramp. So that's pretty good. And then whenever a card goes to your graveyard is pretty good because if you have any great sacrifice synergies, that's going to give you tokens. So you're cracking your fetch lands or your whatever, sacrificing your lands in some other way, you're going to get bodies as well. So Sand Scout, I think, is more narrow, but it's less narrow than people think. My real number 1, in a similar slot is Claim Jumper, which is for 2 and a white, 3/3 Rabbit Mercenary with Vigilance. When it enters the battlefield, if an opponent controls more lands than you, you may search your library for a Plains card, put onto the battlefield tapped. Then if an opponent controls more lands than you, repeat the process once. If you search your library this way, shuffle. So this is kind of like White of the Night Orchid, except it's 3 mana, and it's a better body, and you potentially might get 2 lands out of it. This is especially going to happen if you're playing against a green player and they're mad land ramping. The thing that I really like about Claim Jumper, though, is like Night of the White Orchid, you can grab non-basics. So you can grab your duels. Most notably, you can grab your Surveil lands, but you can also grab your Shocks or your Snow Duels or any of the other fetchable lands. So these cards are sweet. I like White Catch-Up Ramp in general, but these especially are high up there. These are high on the list of good catch-up ramp.
Clearly for us, I think that White did the best in this set. I mean, I think most of the cards that we talked about have White in them if they aren't mono White. And I think that this is like probably the best White catch-up spell. Like, it's probably the best White ramp spell if I think about it, because it's 3 mana. You could get 2 lands potentially out of it, and they don't have to be basics. They're Plains cards. Anything that just grabs you, like that has the potential to grab you a non-basic land is it's really good. And the thing about it too, like, it's a tough creature. It's not like it's a 1/1 wimpy do nothing thing. It's a 3/3 with Vigilance. Like, this is a viable creature to use after it enters the battlefield. Both of these cards, by the way, I want to say, they work with another round.
That's true. Now, are you still going to have your catch-up ramp turned on after you've done it twice? Maybe not, but
It depends on how far behind you are, I suppose.
yeah, maybe. Yeah, what do you think, Preston?
I've never really been a huge fan of the whole White Catch-Up Ramp mechanic, so I don't really care about either of the cards for that. But I actually think Sand Scout is going to be really good in a lot of green-white sort of landfall-y decks, because a lot of those lands you can like sacrifice to do something. There's the cycling ones. There's a lot of times in games where you will put lands into the graveyard without even thinking about it for one reason or another. So to just get a free 1/1 every time you do, or once a turn, that's gonna build up in some decks without really seeming like it's gonna like be that impactful. But then suddenly that person has like 5 of them.
It is, yeah, whenever a land is put into your graveyard from anywhere. So, I mentioned fetch lands, but it also works if you, like you said, cycle it, or if it gets milled or whatever. Yeah, so. And like I said, I think there's enough usable deserts that first ability is sometimes going to matter. Not every deck, but a good chunk.
I'm so just thrown by Preston not being a fan of White catch-up ramp. Like, why? That's White's way of doing it, though.
I know it is. I just don't like that mechanic. I don't
White
like
can't do it
having
any
to
other
be
way,
behind
though.
every-
White
I
can't.
know.
But
I
so
just don't like it.
get used to
I
it.
know
It's not
that's
going to
how you-
change. I do you still play these types of cards, or do you not play?
Yeah, I'll play them. I just don't like them that much. I just wish there were some better options sometimes.
I'm thinking Claim Jumper is maybe better than Knight of the White Orchid. Like, Knight of the White Orchid is like a white staple, and this might be better. So I think it's not going to go in all of the same decks, but I think it's on par. I think it's on par. It's pretty cool. I like both of these cards. I'm going to play both of them, at least in a few decks. So, yeah.
I won't be playing Sand Scout. I'll be playing Claim Jumper for sure, but I will not be playing Sand Scout. Sorry to disappoint. I do actually, whatever the desert you said that exile all graveyards.
Scavenger Grounds, yeah.
Yeah, I do run that in a couple. but it's very rare that I've needed to tutor it up onto the battlefield. And I don't even think the decks that I run it in have white.
Yeah. Yeah, it is definitely more narrow than Claim Jumper. But I think that if you can turn on one or both of those modes consistently, it's worth considering. So, yeah. Anyways, that is going to... Well, I'll say this. One of the episodes we're going to do eventually is we're going to have a... talking about our favorite utility lands in Commander. And I'll make you believe in Sand Scout. I'll make you a believer in Sand Scout. All right? We'll make it happen. All right. So that's going to do it for our list of our personal favorite cards from the new set, Outlaws of Thunder Junction, and its accompanying sets, the Big Score and the Commander set. So, like I said, tune in next week, I guess, for our gameplay. We're playing slightly upgraded precons from the set. And then, let us know in the comments what your favorite cards are in this set. And make sure you're subscribed. We'll have a new podcast episode coming out next week. And we'll see you guys later.